All right. So, good morning, everyone. Before going to the session, so can we have some quick assessment? Right. Still see some people, so a few more people need to join. Yeah. So let's have some quick assessment. Meanwhile, before others join. Okay. Yes, able to hear me?
Yes, Kishore.
Right. So, what are the four major factors for doing performance testing?
Stability,
Scalability, and reliability.
Okay. So, what is scalability?
application can handle the unexpected users load.
Right.
And check how does it behaves with respect to
And behaves
capacity.
the capacity.
Okay. Right. So, how scalable is the application? So, what is the what is the and how does the application behave under unexpected user load? When there is more than expected user load, how does it behave? Right. That is scalability. What are the different client side metrics?
Like response time, hits per second,
Time hits per second, throughput.
disk IOPS.
Disk IOPS. It should be read as disk IOPS. Okay. So yeah. So what are the important client side metrics? Hit response times, hits per second. Yes.
Throughput, disk
Throughput,
IOPS.
disk IOPS. Right. So next question is like, what is the difference between a request and a hit?
URL enter in the browser. So that is the request.
Yeah, right. So the URL that we enter into the browser, that is a main HTTP request. Correct. And what is hit?
Request actually going to the server.
Right. The actual requests that are going to the server are the number of sub requests. Right. The total number of sub requests that are going to the server, those are called as hits to the web server. The actual requests which are going to the web server, right? Those are called as hits. Those are called as hits, right? Yeah, perfect. So next question is like, what is throughput?
Number of requests on application.
Can I handle?
Right.
So like
throughput is the number of
byte received.
Yes.
Number of
So
requests
from a server perspective, yeah, from a server perspective, throughput is the number of requests that an application can handle, right? And from a client perspective, like it is the bytes and plus byte received. Throughput is nothing but the amount of data transferred from browser to server and vice versa. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So amount of data transferred. When I say amount of data transferred, that is nothing but request plus response, isn't it? So byte sent is request, byte received is response, right? So byte sent plus byte received, these make the throughput, right? Disk IOPS means disk input output operations per second, right? So means what is the disk utilization, right? Okay. And coming to server side metrics. So what these are the important server side metrics: CPU, memory, disk, network utilization, and processor queue length. What is processor queue length is?
So waiting for other
request to perform its action one by one.
Right. So the number of process waiting in the queue for their for their turn. So actually we call them as CPU cycles, right? So whenever whenever a user or whenever a process gets the CPU cycle, then only processor will serve the request, right? Processor queue length is nothing but how many processes are waiting in the queue. Processor queue, right? That is processor queue length. Correct. Next. Yeah. So, and also we discussed like, what are the why do we do performance testing for an already existing application and a newly built application? So I think I covered it till till here, right? Yesterday in the last session I covered till here. Whenever there is a new feature or functionality getting added, right, and increasing number of users are adding new users, right, and a major software upgrade like database or OS migration, operating system migration, right, or on servers, or whenever there is a hardware upgrade, isn't it? Say for example, so assume that your system is slow, your laptop or desktop is slow, and when you are opening multiple programs, your laptop or desktop is slow, right? So generally what do? So you will, suppose you upgraded the RAM, so you added some more RAM, and what do you do immediately? Once you do a hardware upgrade, so what do you do immediately? Guys, let's assume that you are opening some programs like some programs, and you observe that your system is hanging, and your hardware, you observe that RAM is insufficient. So if you upgrade the RAM, immediately you will launch the same programs, and you will see, right, how they are performing now after upgrading RAM. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So in the same way, for applications, web applications also, whenever we are going to, or whenever we do a hardware upgrade, we will do performance testing to see if if there is any improvement in the performance or not, isn't it? Guys, able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right? So whenever there is hardware upgrade also, we do performance testing for a web application. Web application or mobile application, doesn't matter whether it is a web application or a mobile application, right? So whenever there is some hardware upgrade on, where is this hardware upgrade on? Servers, right? On our servers like web server, app server, or database server, isn't it? Let me elaborate this. That's on servers, web app, or DB servers, database servers, right? Now let's understand, fine, this is for already existing application. Now let's understand, why do we need to do performance testing for a newly developed application, right? Suppose there is a newly developed application, and so in that case, what are the reasons for doing performance testing for a newly developed application, right? So the first and foremost thing is assess readiness of production environment and determine capacity of existing systems, right? So whenever a newly developed application is there, right? So why do we do performance testing? To assess readiness of production environment, means to check how suitable or how good is the application to go live or to go into production, right? So to test that, we do performance testing for a newly built applications and determine capacity of existing systems. Based on our discussion till now, can you guess like what is this determining capacity of existing systems? What does mean by capacity of existing systems here?
Like hardware.
Hardware, yes. Only hardware. Now, what capacity are we determining here?
User load capacity.
Perfect. So that is determining capacity means how much users can that application support, isn't it? How many user load capacity, or what is the target, what is the user load that the application can handle, right? So to determine that, we do performance testing for a newly built application. Clear, guys? When I say determine capacity of existing systems, how many users can the application support? That's what this means. Is it clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
And assess readiness to production environment. Assess readiness of production environment means how good is the application to go into production or to go live, right? To go live, how good is the application to go live? Yes or no?
Yes, Kishore.
Right? And the next one is creating benchmark for future systems. We'll discuss what is benchmark and baselining. Then you will get a clear understanding. So basically, let me give you a high level overview here. So, and assume that an application is newly developed, right? So in future, like there may be some new enhancements, new features. There may be some hardware upgrade, or there may be some configuration changes, right? So to create benchmark for the future systems, benchmarking means like we to do an initial testing, to do an initial round of testing, right? We do this performance testing for a newly built application, right? And to compare multiple platforms. When I say multiple platforms, suppose what is meant by platform here? The operating system, the underlying operating system and all, underlying operating system, hardware and all those, right? So to compare multiple platforms means whether it gives best performance on Windows OS or Linux OS. Again, in Linux we have different flavors of Linux, right? So also different hardware, we have different hardware, right? So like Intel process we have, and we have AMD process, and there are many more things, many more different hardware configurations. So to compare multiple platforms also we can do performance testing. Okay, when I say multiple platforms here, it can be the hardware platform or the software configuration. Clear, guys? And to compare performance characteristics with different system configurations. To compare performance characteristics with different system configurations. Right? Means configuration means different system settings. With different system settings. You will understand more in detail, like in the coming up sessions, right? So but basically, like this is one of the important reason why we do performance testing for a newly built application. That's why I have highlighted in a different color, right? And validate any application against its performance criteria, right? This is a big discussion point. Performance criteria, right? So when I say performance criteria, any application, any web application or any mobile application, it will have certain performance criteria. So the performance criteria means it can be something like this. Let me open your notes thing. So any application can have a performance criteria, something like this, right? So one criteria can be response time should be within the SLAs. SLA means
Service level agreement.
service level agreement, right? So now let's understand what is the service level agreement, right? Say for example, home page should be, I'm just giving some examples, okay? Home page should be loaded within 2 seconds, something like this, right? Login should not take more than 3 seconds. There will be certain performance criteria for any application, right? Search should not take more than some 4 seconds. I'm just giving some examples only, guys, okay? These are not hardened, these are not fixed numbers, depends on application to application. However, for any application will have certain SLAs like this. Home page should be loaded in 2 seconds, or login page should be loaded within 3 seconds. A search operation should not take more than 4 seconds, like that, something like that. So this is one of the performance criteria, right? This is one of the performance criteria. So there can be other performance criteria also, right? So for instance, suppose there is some banking application, right? Some banking application should handle some some 1500 transactions per second. Right? We call this as TPS, transactions per second. TPS stands for transactions per second. So suppose there is some banking application, right? So what is a transaction? Any user action is called as a transaction. Any user action is called as a transaction. So the performance criteria can be something like this. This banking application should handle some 1500 transactions per second, right? That can be one performance criteria. So in this way, there can be different types of performance criteria for any application. Okay. So is it clear? You got an idea what is meant by performance criteria?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? Perfect. Next. So validation. So to validate any application against its performance criteria, right? Every application will have certain performance criteria. So to validate the application against the performance criteria, we do performance testing, right? And uncover what components of an application suffer poor performance and under what conditions. Uncover what components of an application suffer poor performance and under what conditions. To understand this, first we need to know what are the different components of an application, right? Let us understand what are the different components of an application. Components means parts, right? Components means different parts, right? Suppose this is a typical web application architecture, right? Any normal any web application, right? Or will have some architecture like this, right? So what do we see here? We see that there is some load balancer, a web server, 3 web servers, again another load balancer, and then 4 application servers and 3 database servers, right? So these are the components of this application. If you assume that this is a some web application is there which is having this type of configuration, hardware, right? Hardware configuration, sorry, not hardware configuration. So this type of, with this type of configuration, see, web server, app server, database server, these are all softwares, right? Web server is a software, application server is a software, load balancer is also a software. So there is some application with some this typical configuration, right? So these are all called components of the application. Load balancer, web server, again another load balancer, and 4 application servers and database servers, and again one load balancer here in between your application server and database server, right? So in the last session, I explained, what does, why this is web server is called as presentation tier, why this application server is called logic tier, or why this database server is called as persistence tier, right? I explained, I covered that in the previous session. So if someone missed the previous session, please go through the, previous session recording, right? So these are, for now, what you need to understand is these are the different components of an application, right? Now, so if any component is, not working properly, or if, any component is not configured properly, right? It causes performance issues, right? Right? Even one component is not performing well, you will see performance issues. Yes or no? See, say for example, there are different components in your bike, right? You have a bike, and there will be obviously number of components, right? So no matter which component performs, so if any important component is not working well, definitely it will impact the performance, right? Your vehicle performance, isn't it? Whether if tires are not good, or if your engine is not good, or if if your clutch plates are not good, any important component will impact the performance. Yes or no? The overall vehicle performance. Yes or no, guys?
Yes.
So like in the same way, any application component, if it is not performing well, right, it will impact the overall performance, application performance, right? Now, to uncover what components of an application suffer poor performance and under what conditions, right? So to find out that, we do performance testing and find any performance bottlenecks. Find any performance bottlenecks. Bottlenecks means performance issues, right? Right? If there are, to find out if there are any performance bottlenecks also, we do performance testing, right? and support system tuning, right? So when I say system tuning, so system tuning means, say for example, you found some component, some component is not configured properly or not giving better performance, right? So tuning that component is called as, performance tuning or system tuning of the application. Got it? Yes or no? You understood or no? So system means application here, the application that we are testing. So system tuning means, tuning the application. Tuning the application means making some changes in the application to give better performance. That's it. Okay. There is no rocket science here, guys. Like it's the same. So when I say system tuning, that is nothing but, changing some configuration to get optimum performance. That is called as, system tuning. To support that system tuning also, we do performance testing.
Can you write any other word? Tuning is not a better.
You don't understand that what is meant by tuning?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm just thinking, like what live example I can give. May I know who is the one who asked this question?
Harish.
Harish. Yeah. So like you may be having a bike, right? Bike or scooter or something. What do you have? Yeah, Harish.
Yes, sir.
You have a bike,
Okay.
right? So suppose, like you want, you are not getting good mileage, right? So
Okay.
like so what do you ask, like your mechanic? So assume that you are not getting good mileage and it's consuming a lot of fuel, right?
Yeah.
So you'll say the mechanic that like I'm not getting good mileage, right? So then what he will do? So basically he will do the servicing of the vehicle, right? If it requires, he will do the servicing of the vehicle. And if it is already serviced, right, what does he do? So he generally, like he adjusts the engine beating, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
if the engine beating is set higher, faster, it will obviously consume more fuel.
Consume the more fuel.
So what does he do? So he adjusts the engine beating to make it slow, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? At the same time, it should not slow, the engine should not get stopped when you slow down, right? So he will adjust the tuning, he will adjust the engine beating in such a way that it doesn't stop when you slow down the vehicle. At the same time, it gives it will give more mileage if you increase the system engine beating, right? So it will consume more fuel, it will run faster and it will consume more fuel, right? So that is, he is tuning the engine there. He's doing some changes to the engine beating, to the way how engine works, right? To get a better performance here, to get a better mileage, isn't it?
Okay.
So that is similar to this application tuning or system tuning. So we make some changes in the application configuration. It can be software configuration or hardware configuration to get better performance. That's it.
Okay, sir.
So that is called a system tuning.
Okay.
Right?
Sir, actually, one question. Home place loading is any standard timings or 3-5 seconds any?
No, it
Any
depends.
home
So
place?
yeah, so basically nowadays, web applications have some certain SLS. So home page
Yeah,
should be loaded. So there is no fixed number, like it should be only 2 seconds. There is nothing like that. So it depends on the type of your application. Okay. So generally how these numbers will be derived is, I'll give some example. I'll give some good example here. Say for
Okay.
example, we have Amazon and Flipkart from many years. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
From many years we have Amazon and Flipkart. Now recently, JioMart came into existence, right? Reliance has started JioMart, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right? Now it is same kind of business as Flipkart and Amazon. Yes, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? So now, JioMart development team will be asked to develop their application in such a way that they will see that the how much time homepage is taking for Flipkart and Amazon, right? Based on that, they will give some the architecture team, right? There will be some architect, application architect. They will see the other applications or other competitors in the industry, right? And based on that, they will decide certain SLS that my application should my homepage should be loaded within 2 seconds, or if I search for some product, it should be loaded in we should get the search results in some 4 seconds. Like that, it will be decided. So they'll take the industry standards.
Okay, okay.
So based on that, they will fix that SLS.
Okay.
Because they have to compete with their competitors, right? Suppose your Amazon or Flipkart is loading, suppose you go to Amazon.in. If it is loading in 2 seconds, and if Flipkart is also loading in 2 seconds, and JioMart takes 5 seconds or 6 seconds, any user will not prefer that application, right?
Okay.
Those who are accustomed to faster applications, they will not like those new applications, right? So based on the industry standards, like they will determine the response time SLS.
Okay.
Anything else, guys? So any other queries? I'll take a pass here. Very important interview question. So why do we do performance testing, right? So even though they don't ask, you can segregate in two ways. Like we do performance testing. Or the major factors for doing performance testing can be classified into two types. For a like you can explain first. Why do we do performance testing for an already existing application and for a newly built application, right?
Yes.
And you can tell these examples, right? Here you can give the examples that I have mentioned yesterday, like that Kotak Mahindra Bank acquired ING Vaishya Bank, and there is increase in number of users for Kotak.com now, right? Then they have to Kotak.com should do performance testing for their application to see if their application supports those new users or not, right? So you can give some examples like this. So like if you use, so generally like these questions will be in the first 5 or 10 questions. So if you answer this, like you will your whole interview will go with a very positive impression. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right. And also you should know, like what, when you are doing performance testing, what is the objective, why we are doing performance testing. It can be any of this. It can be any of this. So you have to know what is the objective of doing performance testing in that case, right? Once you are into a project, right? You should be having a clarity on that. Then you can work towards that direction, that particular direction, right? So now any questions here? Any queries? Any questions? So Kirti, did you go through the yesterday's session? Kirti, as you joined today. So I shared you, like yesterday's session. Did you get a time to go through that?
No, sir, I didn't get any time. Today I do it.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So any queries before we move to the next slide?
Compare multiple platforms. It's like a software or any applications compare.
It can be both. It can be, it can be a software platform or, hardware also. To compare multiple hardware platforms also, we can do performance testing.
Okay.
Say for example, most of the applications, will be hosted in Linux boxes. Mostly in Linux boxes only. Means your servers, for servers there will be, see, let me, so once the application is developed, right? So they have to use some, web server, app server, DB server, and they need to use some operating system, right? I mean, if they have an option to choose the operating system, they have to determine like which operating system gives better performance and better security and all, right? To compare that, multiple platforms. For instance, there are many flavors of most of the servers. They will be using Linux servers, and again in Linux we have different flavors of Linux. We have different flavors of Linux. Let me show you that. There is Red Hat Enterprise Linux, there is SUSE Linux, and there is AAX, and there is Solaris, right? There are different flavors of Linux. Suppose someone want to see like most of the servers use a Red Hat Enterprise Linux nowadays, right? So but like based, of course, like again that depends on the budget, that depends on the requirement and all, right? So to determine like which which operating system gives better performance, also what they can do is like they they deploy the software on on two different. Suppose they want to compare Red Hat Enterprise Linux and for example SUSE AX or Solaris, right? So they do performance testing on both the platforms and see like which platform gives better performance. Yeah.
Okay.
So for that comparison purpose also we can do performance testing, right?
Okay.
So any other queries, guys? So please go through the previous session recording before attending the any session, so that you can put forward any of your queries, doubts, right? So you have to like you can ask any doubt now itself, right? So unless until these all will be having like a bit interdependence on each other, right? So unless until you understand the previous concepts, you will not get any doubts, guys. Okay. So please go through the recording once before attending the session. I'm already sharing you, as demo sessions as of now. So once you join, once we start Loadrunner also or JMeter, so I'll be sharing the recorded sessions to you as a private videos, right? So please go through the recorded session once after the session if you don't understand, or like when you are practicing, right?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So shall we move to the next slide? Okay. Now, what are the prerequisites for doing performance testing? Right? Prerequisites means what are the what are the initial requirements to do performance testing? What is the initial requirement? Right. So everybody knows what is performance testing, right? Performance testing is nothing but testing the application with the expected user load. Say for example, you have like say for example you have IRCTC application. The expected user load on IRCTC application is 5 to 6 lakh users, right? I mentioned in one of the previous sessions. IRCTC application will be in general, not now, but before this pandemic, there used to be like 5 to 6 lakh users per day. 5 to 6 lakh users per day spread across the country to book the tickets or to print the tickets or to check the availability, right? Or to book some holiday package or hotel rooms and all, isn't it? There are different functionalities in IRCTC, right? We can book a ticket, or we can book buses, we can book flight tickets, hotel rooms, holiday packages, right? So there are different features, right? So normally IRCTC will be having 5 to 6 lakh users per day, right? These are numbers announced by IRCTC only, guys. Okay, these are correct numbers only, not rough numbers. Okay, so if you are testing IRCTC, suppose you got a project to test IRCTC application, right? So you have to test with those many number of users, 5 to 6 lakh users only. Okay, isn't it, guys? Suppose IRCTC introduce some new feature tomorrow and they want to do some performance testing, right? So you have to test, you have to find out what are the critical business flows of the application. Means when I say critical business flows, what does it mean? For IRCTC, what are the critical business flows? Or for any travel application, what are the critical business flows, guys? Guys, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, explained it right already in the previous sessions. Those who attended previous sessions, what are the critical business flows of travel application?
For fares.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Like
we already
user
discussed this, right?
registration,
For the
booking
travel
the
application.
tickets,
What are the-
canceling the tickets, and
Scalability.
searching the packages.
Yeah, user registration, search availability, and search packages, book tickets, payment, cancel ticket, and all this, right? These are the critical business flows, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right? Now, so we will simulate the suppose if the target user load is 5 lakhs, we have to test the apply. So don't worry, like you will not get that much large applications always, right? You may be getting a small applications, like when you are working for a small companies, right? So and as your experience grows, definitely yes, you will be getting more complex projects. Okay. So what is performance testing? We simulate that much user load on the application and see how the application is responding and what are the response times of each page and all, right? Now to do that performance testing, what are the prerequisites? What are the requirements to do performance testing? Let us understand that, right? A stable build, the first and foremost thing is requirement is a stable build with no major functional defects. With no major, a stable build with no major functional defects, right? What is meant by functional defects?
Functionality is not working correct.
Like
Right.
application.
So basic functionality is not, say for example, if basic functionality is not working fine, right? Then there is no point in doing performance testing. Say for example, if you are if you are searching for some, if you are searching and if you are, you got some search results, right? Suppose you are selecting something, selecting one city, but it is not getting populated here, right? So there is some functional defect, right? The functionality itself is not working. Then there is no point in doing performance testing, right? Because if an application doesn't work for a small set of users, 1 or 2 users, it will not work for thousands or lakhs of users, definitely. Yes or no? If the application is functionally not stable, there is no point in doing performance testing. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? So that is the first and foremost prerequisite for doing performance testing. And then the next one is performance testing environment should be identical to production environment. Another important prerequisite. The performance testing environment should be ideally identical to production environment. Let us understand what is this, right? Let's understand what does this mean, right? So when I say environment, right, this is, let's assume that, IRCTC has 3 web servers, 4 application servers, and, 3 database servers, right, in production. So you should understand here what is production and what is test environment. Production environment means which is already live, which is used by real-time users. That is production environment, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. And you will not be doing testing on production environment. Please note that, right? When you are doing performance testing, you will not do mostly, for most of the applications, you will not do on production. For some applications, very few clients, right? If they don't have a separate test environment, then then only you will do in production. Otherwise, you will have a separate environment called test environment. I already explained that performance testing will be done in an environment called test environment, or what is that? Anyone remember that? Test environment or engineering environment?
Engineering environment.
So environment, what is meant by environment here? A group of servers, that's it, right? A group of servers on which that application, a particular application is running, That's it, right? Now you will not do, testing on production environment, because why? Why can't we do testing on production environment? So production environment will be having the real-time data, right? Real-time users data and all usernames and passwords. So, that usernames and passwords are credentials are, secured, right? They are confidential, right? That is one thing that, the confidential data cannot be, disclosed to the testing team, right? And also, if there is some issue when you are testing, your production environment may crash, right? So, like then real-time users will suffer, isn't it? Suppose, there are, some 1 lakh users using some application like ICICIbank.com, right? So first of all, the user data and all will be stored in the database, right? Usernames, passwords, and all those, right? That is confidential data. That is one thing. The other thing is like, if you are doing testing, on production environment, already, like some users will be using that application, right? So, like you cannot, like put more load on the application, right? So for all these, there are a number of other reasons also. So for all these reasons, we will do performance testing in a separate environment called test environment, right? Is it clear, guys? And that performance testing environment should be identical to production. When I say identical to production, what does it mean is, suppose if you have 3 web servers in production, in test environment also you should be having 3 web servers. And if you have 4 application servers in production, right, and 3 database servers in production, so you should be having similar setup in test environment. Then only you will get accurate results, isn't it? Yes or no?
Sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Someone is asking something. All right. So you understood, right? What is meant by this? What is this? Prerequisite. Your test environment should be identical to production, right? And to ensure consistent results, performance testing environment should be isolated from other environments such as UAT or development. Means no other testing should be done on that environment, or no other team should be using that performance testing environment to get consistent results, right? And no other testing while doing performance test executions, and conduct performance testing before application go live, obviously. So before any application goes live, it makes sense to do performance testing only before the application goes live, goes into production, right? So once it goes into production, if there are some performance issues, right, if that will impact your business badly, that will impact the revenue badly, right? So I'll give some examples which I faced, right? So previously, 5 years back, I used to use Axis Bank. Right? So it was my salary account, like, for a couple of years, right? So whenever I try to do fund transfer, so, I used to initiate some fund transfer. I should get an OTP and I should enter the OTP to complete the transaction. So 5 to 6 years back, what used to happen is, every time most of the times I initiate some transaction, that OTP used to not come on time, right? And by the time I receive the OTP on my mobile and I enter it, the OTP used to expire, right? So they have kept some, OTP expiry time, some 30 seconds or 1 minute. And, that OTP used to take time to reach my mobile, right? You understood, right? That OTP used to come late, most of the times with Axis Bank. This happened with Axis Bank for me, right? Then I stopped using Axis Bank and I switched to Kotak Mahindra Bank, right? So what is happening here? Axis Bank is losing one customer. At the same time, their competitor is becoming strong. They are losing business to their competitor. Axis Bank, Kotak is one of their competitor. So they are losing business as well as they are giving business to their competitor, isn't it? So that is the reason, like, performance testing is very important, and this performance testing should be done before application go live. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? You understood, right, why performance testing is important? Not only you will lose revenue, your company will lose revenue, but also your competitor will become strong, right? It will be, disadvantage or, double whammy effect, right? So it would be a double blow. Got it? Suppose if, Flipkart is not working, suppose, you are a regular customer of Flipkart, but when you're searching for some product, the page is loading very slow, or, while placing the order, you could not complete payment successfully, right? So next time when you want to buy something, you will think of other options, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right, so you may switch to Amazon or some other JioMart or something, right? Then what is happening here? Flipkart is losing one customer, at the same time that business is going to your competitor, their competitor, that is Amazon or JioMart, right? So that's why, before going to production, before any application go live, before application goes into production, they have to conduct performance testing, right? And comprehensive understanding and knowledge of the application. You should have a comprehensive, complete understanding and knowledge of the application to do performance testing. So these are the prerequisites for doing performance testing, right? These are the important prerequisites for doing performance testing. So without having, knowledge of the application, of your application architecture, you cannot do proper testing, right? So you have to know, the testing team, the performance testing team should know their application properly. What is the architecture of the application? How does the application work? And what are the SLAs, right? So they should know all this, isn't it? What are the critical business flows of the application? They should compulsory cover all those critical business flows or important business flows, right? So to know important business flows, they need to understand the application, and they should have a comprehensive knowledge of the application, isn't it? Then only, the performance testing efforts will be fruitful. I'll take a pass here. So any queries before we close the session for today? So I'll stop it here for today. So any queries before we close for today? So in the next session, tomorrow's session, this is very important one. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday, right? So on the Monday session, we will discuss what are the different types of performance testing, and when do we do different types, each of them. When do we do each of those, right? I'll explain these, different types of performance testing, and and we'll have some quick assessment. Once I explain the different types of performance testing, I'll be showing you graph like this, and based on your understanding, you have to tell me what type of test is this, right? Once I explain the different types of performance testing, you'll be having some quick assessment. I have around 5 graphs, right? 5 graphs, right? So I'll show them, and I'll explain what type of test is that, right? That will help me understand how good you are understanding the concepts, how good you are following the sessions and understanding the concepts, right? Please don't miss Monday's session, which is very important one. So I'll take a we'll stop it here for today. So any queries before we close the session for today?
Hi, Kishore.
Yeah.
I have a question on this point. You said we should not have any major functional defects, right?
Yes.
So it depends on the module in the application, or the whole application should be ready for performance testing without defects.
Yeah, so we should know what is the objective of doing testing. Say, for example, there is some new feature added to the application. So you want to do performance testing to see how the application behavior is after introducing that new feature. Then at least that module should be functioning well, right? If it is not so important module, we can ignore that.
Okay.
Right? So that's why I mentioned no major functional defects. There can be some minor functional defects, but there should not be major functional defects. For example, you are testing a net banking application. So for that, suppose you want to test some new feature. For example, IMPS was introduced in some bank recently, right? Let's assume that there is some bank which doesn't do IMPS transfer till now, and they want to introduce that IMPS feature. Now that functionality should be, that is major functionality for them for now, right? For that, that is the major objective of doing performance testing. So there should be no major defects over there around that area, that IMPS fund transfer thing.
Okay. Okay. So even
There
single
can be some,
functionality.
there can be some minor, functionality defects, right? So which we can ignore, like if it is not important, but the major functionality should be working fine.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. So if you are testing IMPS, right? So, for example, the IMPS, we have different types. You can add, you can do IMPS without adding beneficiary, or you can do with adding beneficiary. After adding beneficiary, you can do IMPS in that way. So these are major for that particular round of testing. So that should not be having any defects, functional defects. Yeah. Any other queries, guys?
The general query, if I go through previous session, when should I clarify my doubts in that session?
So you can ask, like you can join for the next session, you can join bit early and we can discuss.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So, like for the first 5-10 minutes, we are, so as I explained, like we'll be having, for the first 5-10 minutes of every session. So as of now, I'm taking only 1 hour session, but once the complete batch is formed, right, like we'll be having 1.5 hour session. So for the first 5 to 10 minutes, like I'm not going into first 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not going into concepts, right? Theory or scripting sessions. As you can see here, we'll follow this. For the first 5 to 10 minutes, we can have some aptitude questions, or we can discuss some aptitude questions, or we will have daily assessment, right? At that time, we can discuss those also. If we have any queries on the previous sessions, we can discuss those as well.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So, we'll follow this, from Monday, right? So today also we had some assessment before, everyone joined. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will pass the recording, guys. If you don't have any other queries, guys. Okay. So for the recording purpose, so thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll be uploading this session to my YouTube channel.